The story begins with a girl waking up in an obscure palace, and when she first opened her eyes in this strange place, the first thing that struck her was an incomprehensible odor. Also, when she woke up, there were two obscure girls standing over her soul saying, "Nadia, at last," and pretending to be worried about her and very glad she was awake. One madame thanked her and said she was very grateful to her and not to worry her like that again, and also her father came running in from behind and was very pleased that she had finally come to her senses. Nadia was sure she was hallucinating at first, so it even got to the point where she tried to pinch herself to see if it was a dream. And then she prayed, just to get answers to all her questions. She then recalled that she had recently posted comments on social media, something that she would be amused to hear the story of how the main character was reborn, but couldn't bear the sinister odor. She couldn't believe that she found herself in this place just because she had written some comment, and that it would be funny to her. Then when she turned around, she saw some obscure couple walking together, and she was about to hide before they noticed, but it was too late. When they saw her, they thought she wanted to pray. So she had no strength at that moment. She leaned against the wall, after which she muttered that it was a joy to meet them, and what great people they were, really. Afterwards, she was so unpleasant that she thought she was going to vomit, for the smell was like feces mixed with perfume. The girl immediately began to worry and asked what was wrong with Nadia and offered her help as Nadia was pale. But she was against it, for she thought it would be too dangerous for them if they came any closer. At that moment, a wind blew very strongly near them, and the girl's hair fluttered very much. And then Nadia was sure she could stand it all, but she fell a little short and she did pass out. Later, when she woke up again in some bed, she wondered, is she the only one suffering from this unbearable will, and perhaps the people who are here have something wrong with their sense of smell? And at that moment, she sharply smelled the scent of flowers. A girl walked into the room. Nadia realized it was Arwen, her sister, and as it turned out, she had brought a bouquet for Nadia at her recent request. Her sister came over and started telling her how worried she was when she heard the news of her sister's Umarak during Karen Prince's conception. But she didn't say that she was fine now. She also said that Lupin was also very worried about her, but his job at the Magic Tower made him unable to come home because of her. And he is making very good progress on learning about souls through magic. And her sister also commented that in their family, she wished she could always be there to protect her, as her happiness and health is a priority for their family. At that moment, Nadia thought and realized that she had realized a whole new reality. And her older sister was a knight commander and heiress to a duchy, and her younger brother was a mage. And Nadia, as it turns out, is the second daughter of the Goldgate family, one of the two duchies of the empire, which means that the parents are the Duke and Duchess. Also, they have a huge estate, and kind and caring servants are present. She was very happy at first, but tears came to her eyes, on her face, because she thought she was born, and lived the life of a man with a golden spoon in his mouth, and decided that it was not a bad life, except for the hygiene issues. She happened to be in a fantasy novel, and she thought it meant that she would meet the main character, and saw it so that he proposes to her and they will be together, in the name of love, and that she would make her own way through sire reality with the power of men. A little later, she came back to reality and decided that she would go look for the main character after she took a bath. And her sister immediately started stopping her right away and telling her that she should stay in bed now. But she does notice that she feels really gross after waking up in a cold sweat. That's why she's going to take a bath, since the main character will probably run away if Nadia meets him like that. As she said this, she walked to the door and turned around to realize that he was already here. She hadn't expected them to meet so soon. The guy who came up behind her turned out to be the family's doctor, but she thought he was definitely the main character. Whereupon she stepped back a little and told him to come through, and if he would give her a moment, she would go freshen up. But then he took her hand, and she started to get nervous, and immediately realized that this guy was being way too straightforward from the start, and she totally approved of it. He walked her to the bed and started saying something. She was very pleased and expected something more from him, but he started to say that bathing was strictly forbidden for her. Then she was just in shock and didn't understand what was going on. She asked him, why? He replied that a frequent cause of her fainting was due to her bathing, and she didn't understand how it happened or why. After which he bowed to her a little and repeated the phrase that bathing was the cause. It was the root of her problem, and called her lady. She was a little flustered at not understanding what he was even saying, and jokingly wondered, was her protagonist really a charlatan? She then looked at his face and told him that it had been 2 days since she had washed her hair, and the doctor said that meant it was crystal clear, and over a week since the last time she bathed. And that's when the doctor picked up on the fact that this is definitely the cause of her weakness. She couldn't control herself and yelled a little that she had everything to do now, and the doctor said it was very unfortunate, but there was nothing he could do. And he also made the point that in the end, suffering a little itching is better than dying from taking a bath. Because after all, no one has ever died from itching. Her head started to explode and incomprehensible things started happening. But since the doctors and the nurse were nearby, they were immediately available to help her through the pain. The nurse said that Isaac should examine Nadia right away, and the doctor said that it was probably a side effect of the bathing. That's why she is strictly forbidden to get out of bed. The nurse implored Nadia to do strictly what the doctor says. And then Nadia's tears came and she thought, why doesn't anyone ever listen to her? Then Nadia thought hard and realized that although she was the protagonist of a love fantasy story, she could very easily be left without a lover if she was too stubborn. So she should just be patient and wait for the moment when she could take a bath again. When he touched her, her face immediately creased. She immediately smelled perfume and thought to herself, how much perfume did the protagonist pour on himself? The doctor immediately started asking her what was wrong with her. Had her pain gotten worse? And then Nadia said that she had just thought a little and realized for herself that because of the unbearable stench, her head was just splitting. Then the doctor took her with both hands, brought her to his face as if he wanted to kiss her, and began to examine her face. It looked very romantic. Nadia was very shocked and hoped that... And then the doctor said she would feel better once she was well rested, and remarked that apparently she was running a fever. The nurse in the back immediately told the doctor that she really appreciated him looking after theirs. Well, the doctor said that. From her sister immediately came an offer for the doctor. She wanted to ask if he would go north with them as Nadia's personal doctor. Then Nadia was very much surprised and did not understand what north was about. After the doctor left, the sister sat down beside Nadia and apologized for not warning her, for she thought Nadia might join her on the next mission. The sister didn't understand what she was talking about. And then the sister noticed that the harvest season was approaching very soon. According to custom, their family was invited to the festival, and the sister herself was chosen to accompany the Empress's Majesty. Namely, this year's festival will be held in the north. So why don't they go there together? The sister also made a point to treat it as a vacation. The harvest season is between late summer and early fall. Every year the Empress organizes a fertility festival to ask the gods for a rich harvest, and it's a great opportunity to protect the family's honor. Therefore, the Gold Gate always takes part to set an example for other aristocrats. Then Nadia said that she was very worried and afraid of accidentally messing something up. After all, they all seemed like such nice people, and she thought it sounded great, but still something was bothering her. And then her sister said that she had nothing to worry about, because her sister would always be at her side and by her side. And then Nadia realized to herself that her sister was the best and how much she cared for her. After all, she is determined, admirable, and yet everything. They then began to discuss where the north was, and the sister said that it was a region with a smaller population than the capital, and technically those lands had been wastelands until the Duchy of Khartan put down roots there. My sister said that this region is known for its cold and dry climate, but she's also heard that the weather there at this time is pretty good, even if it's a little windy. That's okay. Nadia was a little happy about it, because she realized that she could finally get rid of that nasty smell, and after saying that she was behind both hands, and she realized that she was finally free, was very happy. Once they were there, she thought she expected all sorts of wind, but apparently it was overkill. Then her sister said that all knights are capable of using force, and let them change the direction of the storm, and she will protect their squad in the front line. Let the rest of them protect Her Majesties and ladies, no matter what it takes. When Her Majesty got into the carriage, Nadia said that Her Majesty would feel better when Nadia offered her shoulder. And Her Majesty was very pleased that Nadia was so kind to her, when she herself was not really very well. And then Nadia put up her shoulder and immediately smelled the very odor, a very foul odor. The wind was so strong that the carriage door was ripped out of the carriage and it just flew off. Then Nadia stood up and decided what would take the place of the door, told Her Majesty to hold on, and Nadia would not let the wind get inside. It was okay that it was too dangerous. She wasn't sure if she would be okay because luck would help her. Nadia turned around and said, "I'm not going to be blown away by something weak. And that was the last thing she had time to say, as in the same second, very strongly blown away, and she found herself unclear where. She was caught by some guy on a horse, and she thought and said, "I think they caught a beast." Then they rode on horseback, and this very guy stopped the storm with his magic blade. Nadia said, "What a relief," and asked him, "Is everything all right now?" To which he replied that he didn't know. And Nadia thought he looked so depressed, probably because she still hadn't thanked him, after which she thanked him for saving her and called him Mister. Then looking at her once more, the gentleman said, That's disgusting." Nadia remarked uncertainly that she had understood him correctly. He told her that if she could stand on her own, let her move away from him immediately. She didn't realize what was going on and took his hand. Then he yelled out what she was doing and thought she was crazy, and started telling her to get away from him quickly. She, on the other hand, wanted to check something out quickly. As she got closer to him, she realized that he smelled really good, and he finally didn't stink. The smell was delicious. She felt at home in this world for the first time. Whereupon the gentleman shouted again and said that she did not understand him, for he repeated several times that he was not comfortable. Then Nadia said she was sorry, and thought to herself that she had spoiled everything, for she had been in too much of a hurry, wondering what he now thought of her. And at that moment her sister Arwen shouted, "Finally!" Here she was, and started yelling to see if Nadia was hurt, if she was all right. Then she began to fall off the horse. She was very frightened and did not know what to do. But at that moment the gentleman grabbed her gently by the waist and lifted her up. She was amazed at this action. He said she should be careful because horses are very sensitive. No one knows what to expect if you startle them. Then she thanked him for holding her up and keeping her from falling. After which he also said that she seemed to be out of her mind and that she was lucky to be born an aristocrat. Afterwards she thought about his words and realized that she was overreacting, because what else could you think about a man trying to smell you? She was very disappointed that she had made herself look so crazy, and in a bad way she was really ashamed of what had happened. Whereupon the gentleman began to shake the dust off his shoulder on the side that touched Nadia, and she thought, "Isn't this too delusional?" Then her sister went up to Nadia and asked if she was okay, if she was hurt anywhere, and Nadia said that yes, everything was super, all thanks to this gentleman. Her sister was happy that everything was fine and had been taken care of. As they rested, Duke Cortan's aide began to explain what had happened, and said that it looked like Her Majesty Lady Arwen and Goldate had come face to face with the storm. So the carriage door flew off its hinges, and the younger sister flew away with it. Then Her Majesty went up to Duke Cardan and thanked him, saying that he had shown up just in time and she was very grateful. The Duke said he was honored. Duke Cardan is the greatest hero who saved the North from the monster invasion. He recently inherited the title of Duke. When Nadia saw him, she thought, "So this is who Duke Cardan is." She'd imagined him much older, but for a war hero, he looked pretty good. He's about the same age as the main character. Plus, he's a duke and a large-scale war hero. But more importantly, he doesn't stink one bit. He is the typical protagonist of a fantasy novel. Nadia thought to herself that at last she had found him. That love. Her sister Arwen wanted to thank the Duke for saving her little sister, for she is quite fragile and defenseless. She also asked the Duke to move his apology for having insulted her. Then the Duke's aide made one suggestion for her sister. Said that his brightening was ready to make amends by escorting Lady Nadia to the manor, and implied that there was no better solution than that, given that the carriage was missing a door. Then her sister Arwen said no way, only over her dead body. Then Her Majesty remarked that the Duke is right, and also asked her not to forget that the sister is there as Her Majesty's escort. So she left it to Nadia to decide this matter. Let her be the one to make the important decision. After which they began the escort, and then he apologized for not showing proper respect earlier, and acknowledged that he had been too harsh and apologized again. Well, then Nadia said it's okay, and the only one who should apologize is her, especially for her behavior. After which she also thanked him for accompanying her. When they arrived at the castle, they started discussing that it looked like the storms were particularly strong this year. That was why someone had suggested changing the route for the festival, and instead of starting north from Yoni and then back to the capital, they could go straight north from here. Well then, Her Majesty is the patronage of the Empress. This is the essence of the festival, said that in that case, Nadan would not receive her blessing at the peak of the season. It was then that the Duke quipped, "Be what it may, Your Majesty, for the safety of the entire squad must be prioritized above all else. The patronage of the Empress." This is the essence of the fertility festival. Many believe that blessings from the mother of fertility promotes a rich harvest, and is a good opportunity to flaunt his ties to the imperial palace. That's why the Cardin couldn't offer. It's only out of good intentions, especially since the barren northern lands are in his domain. Her sister said that in that case, the Goldate family would see to it that they would help with the preparations for the festival, and Majesty said that she was very appreciative, and it was a pleasure to her, for she could always rely on Mistress Arwen. Later at the table, Majesty said that she had planned to hold the ball on the first day of the season on Dana, and she thought it would be lovely if Nadia and the Duke came to it together. Her Majesty observed that nothing could add more solemnity to the occasion than their presence together. Nadia said she was honored, but since she couldn't dance, she asked if her sister wouldn't be better suited for the role. And then, Her Majesty said no, for her sister would have to stay by her side all evening. Duke also tried to excuse himself, because he didn't like to encourage crowded places, and he said they didn't need to change the tradition because of him, and he thought the ball could be held on the last day of the season. Her Majesty then said not to worry about customs. Let them consider it her gratitude because of his courtesy, one way or another. She would not take no refusal. And her sister told Nadia not to worry about her, and also that she was happy to be able to like her again, as on this so much. Then the Duke said he had a request for Lady Arwen, and wanted her to entrust him with all the preparations for the ball and listen to all his requests. Whereupon he swept up that his maids would look after her sister and do everything, including preparing her dress and catering to her every whim. More importantly, he wants her to take a bath before the ball. 3 times in warm water, he pointed out. And then the sister was very surprised and said, "What kind of joke is this?" Arwen said it sounded like he wanted to insult their family. Why should they put all the responsibility on him, since Nadia is too weak to bathe? And that's the main reason she faints. And then Nadia once again thought about the fact that they lived. She would be able to take a bath even 3 times, and she realized that she had to act right now if she didn't want to miss this opportunity. Since she loved bathing so much and couldn't stand it all, her solution was that she stood up, slapped her hand very hard on the table, and yelled that she was in love. Afterwards, she thought that she couldn't say that she liked to take baths. They might think she was out of her mind. She had no choice but to say that she fell in love with his lordship Duke Cortana the moment he saved her. Afterwards, she'd remarked that he was so amazing, and thought that was exactly what they called fate. She felt very embarrassed in front of him. She didn't know what to do. That was the end of it. And they went to their rooms. She decided that she needed to pull herself together. After all, she'd started it all, and there was no reason to beat herself up about it. She might as well be the Duke's partner, that is, take a bath at the ball. When the sister came to see Nadia, Nadia apologized for that, and the sister asked if she really wanted to go to the ball with the Duke, even if she had to take a bath 3 times. But she told you that she understands why Arwen is worried about her and knows how concerned the family is about her health. After that, she remarked that she really wanted to dance. She had always dreamed of it. And on top of that, her sister had made sure that she had gotten here without any problems, and had not even fainted or gotten sick once. She hadn't even had a fever once during the trip. That's why she wants to try a bath this time, and in no way wants to run away again. She wants a fresh start, she told her sister. Then her sister realized that she had said about falling in love just to take a bath, seeing it as purposefulness. She said she couldn't help it if Nadia was willing to do such a thing, telling her for understanding. Hearing this, and Her Majesty said what a touching story it was, she liked it very much. The sister then reprimanded and said that they would listen to their conditions. Every time she left and took a bath, they would check her physical condition, and of course the examination would be done by their personal physician. 8. If her condition worsens even a little, you will have to stop bathing abruptly. Either way, you need to accept it. Then the Duke said he agreed no problem, and his assistant came into the room as well and said he apologized, but he had a message for him and whispered in his ear that it was time to go. As they began to disperse, Nadia wanted to leave, but right in front of her face, the Duke closed the door and said they had something else to discuss. He was very excited by her speech when she said she was in love with him and decided to ask her if it was true that she was in love with him. She was also surprised, and she didn't think he was that straightforward, but decided that if he really wanted to know, not about himself, she thought, so be it. She answered him that yes, definitely so. After that, the Duke just petrified, couldn't believe it, and left. And for one, the plan worked, and he let her go. And she thought to herself, What a shame. And what would happen if he kicked her out before she danced with him? What would happen to her bathing then? She didn't want to put it off at all. When Nadia finally got to the bathing room, she was just happy. She couldn't believe it was finally happening and she was actually here. She was happy to death. She wondered how long it had been since the last bath. Then a maid came into the bathroom and suggested adding lavender to the water. After that, Nadia agreed and asked who she was. To which the maid replied that her name was Juliana, and today she was entirely responsible for her bathing, and if there was anything she needed, let her know about it. She was just happy, and didn't realize what else could be more refreshing than this. But she also realized that she only had 2 baths left. But if she also wants to keep clean, there's only one option left. Marry the Duke. Then she would always have the option of offering to give the Duke a bath with him. Then she wondered what she was carrying, and if she wanted to stay, accidentally kicked the bell with her foot. Then a maid came into the room, and Nadia said that she had accidentally caught the bell. At that moment, her heart was beating very hard. It was definitely because she was excited at the thought of her daily bath. After her bath, she needed her doctor to examine her, and he started asking questions. If she was dizzy, if she had a rash, or maybe her skin was itchy, to which she said no. He also brought up the fact that she had some water left in her ears, and whether she was sure she was definitely okay. But she said she was fine. The doctor said he was worried as to how it might not cross over, to something more serious, then asked that she let him see if there were any signs. He then leaned over to her ear and asked her to repeat after him. He then repeated a few words, she repeated after him, and he said that her hearing was fine. His voice really appealed to her. It was very mesmerizing. The doctor also mentioned that even though he said there was no problem, he still advised her to be on the lookout all the time, and implied that she should know that one should always be very careful with water, for it could cause various diseases, and also that she might not worry about it as long as he was here. He once again made a point of being very intense when it came to Nadia. Then Nadia said it sounded like there was another reason why he was worried. And the doctor's point is that she's pretty fragile to begin with, and there are also rumors about Duke Cardin as well. They say the Duke has started acting strangely since returning from the war, but he doesn't think they need to worry because he's sure it's just a ploy to blacken his name. But perhaps it would be best for Nadia to stay away from him. Then Nadia wondered what the gossip of the week was that she had heard only recently, and she remembered how she had happened to see the Duke and his aide talking about her. The aide was telling the Duke that Lady Nadia was the first woman they had ever been so intimate with, and asking why he wasn't disgusted with her as he usually was. The Duke replied that it was due to events beyond his control. The aide then methinks that he hopes the Duke refrains from bathing, for rumors continue to spread, saying that the Duke has been bathing excessively since he returned from the war, and that he makes the servants clean the places that are already clean. Then she thought that something had actually happened to him on the battlefield, and at the same moment she heard, as the aide says his parents are desperate for him to find his wife, which is why the aide advised him before these conversations got out of hand. And the Duke interrupted him at that point. In flashback, she says that she's worried that people will be confused by these rumors, and it was because he fought for the Empire, and she asks if they shouldn't show him their appreciation. And then the doctor said that he certainly wasn't trying to change her mind, and everything was fine. He just wasn't being objective as it relates to Lady Nadia, but he asked that she let him know if anything was bothering her. After all, she hadn't had trust issues with her before. Nadia said that she would definitely go to him if anything happened, and that she was very grateful that he was looking after her. She also thought that she must have relied on the doctor quite a lot in the past. She didn't think it was necessary to worry about the Duke's rumors, for apart from that they gave her hope. She now fully believes that Duke Corton is the only one in this world who can save her, and that she can be his salvation too. And the only problem now was what he could think of her for all the situations that had happened between them. Then she thought about it and decided that she could still redeem herself. After all, she had a secret weapon stashed away. Her Majesty announced the start of the fertility festival in Nadan, the heart of the north. Before they started the celebration, she would like to give her blessing to the ruler of these lands. Then she asked the Duke to step forward, after which she gave a speech. As Lord of this region, he has watched over these lands with the utmost devotion. May heaven recognize his labors and efforts and bless these vast lands with unprecedented prosperity. Whereupon he said that he would not take this blessing for granted, Your Majesty. He then asked Nadia to join him for the start of the festival celebrations, to which she responded happily. She was very nervous being around him and he could feel it. so he told her to try to relax and breathe deeply. Also brought up that he's not a good dancer, so that's why he'll have to lead. Also, they both said that there was an expectation of each other. Afterward, the crowd said Nadia was still dancing just as beautifully, and a guy and a girl who smelled really bad started walking up to them. She realized then that Duke was about to vomit just as herself, and something had to be done immediately because this was a complete failure, and then it was all in her hands. And she abruptly came face to face with him and told him that he would feel better now. And then she whispered in his ear that she had decided to ask him if he wanted to go to the balcony with her. "Come out on the balcony," he said, wanting to discuss what she had just told him. Does that really bother her too? Afterward, they both told each other that they were both pissed off at the dirt under their fingernails, the dandruff on their heads, and all of it spreading all over the ballroom. It's all bugging them both. He never believed it and thought she was faking it. Then she pulled out the toothpaste she made herself and said it was a mixture of roasted salt and mint. She put her whole soul into it. Also, the dress she was wearing, adorned with fresh flowers, she had prepared especially for today. It was to protect her. "What's the matter, Duke?" he apologized. That he was over-suspicious, and said he was glad to hear they were alike, and what a relief it was to him that those bathroom treatments didn't cause a disturbance. Then Nadia said that he must have had a hard time too, considering her situation. The Duke remarks that some people make him stop washing, and some people talk badly about him. They all think he has a vision. It is said that he takes baths all the time because he lost his mind after bathing in blood on the battlefield. But now that there are two of them, they decide that things will go better for them because they understand each other. She was very pleased that their cold-blooded Duke, who was indifferent, had just smiled at her. Herzog also said that in his case, his parents were concerned about his condition, and he assumed that Nadia was similarly concerned. And he was also told by his parents that no woman would be interested in a man who took a bath every day. But he thought that was complete nonsense. After which she said that yes, in the same way her parents were worried about her, she asked that he marry her. That's when they could take a bath every day, even twice a day. When she said this, she became very worried, and worried that maybe it was a rejection, or maybe he didn't want to be with her after all, so that he could take a bath several times a day and not have to worry about anything. In that case, she decided to accept the secret weapon she made herself with her own hands, and took out her handmade sea salt and mint toothpaste, and asked that the Duke accept it as a wedding gift. The Duke was also very upset that he would have to offend her, and said that she was a very interesting person. But against all odds, he is afraid that bathing her twice a day is unnecessary and would be too wasteful. At that moment, Nadia thought that in this way he was slowly coming to consent and was about to reach out to kiss him. But at the last moment he said that he was apologizing, but he could not accept her offer. Nadia didn't fully understand why he didn't agree, and it seemed that he would have to explain that they knew each other, and that he shouldn't choose her as his life partner, given that he had only seen her 2 or 3 times. This is a case that needs to be taken very seriously. The Duke, with a frustrated face, began to say that he understood perfectly. Nadia has sparked an interest in him, and realizes that she may be the only person who truly understands him, and it would be absolutely perfect if the one he falls in love with accepts him for who he is. But if he was looking for a wife based on mutual understanding alone, he would have conducted the bathing test. He once again apologized to Nadia, said he was testing his courage, and apologized for not being able to give the answer she was hoping for. But Nadia was not very disappointed that he refused. After all, she had first decided to make a joke, after which it had turned into really love, and now she had also been refused. But he pleased her a little by saying that he would accept the flower she had given him, after which she smelled it and said, "How exquisite it is." For the next few hours she was very disappointed and thought she had screwed up, because he had rejected her absolutely decisively by turning her down. He was so straightforward that she couldn't even object. It wasn't because his arguments were convincing, but because her heart was beating too hard when he made that ambiguous compliment. Even now, when she thought back on it, her heart beat hard. She decided that she couldn't leave things the way they were and wanted to try to convince the Duke again. After all, if she didn't, it would end on a very bad note. She's not going to give up just because she's been rejected. She practiced, picked up a few arguments she could use to explain her feelings, and decided to go into his office after all. Coming down the stairs, After the bathroom, he thought his assistant was coming in. But when he saw Nadia, he was just amazed and didn't understand what she was doing here. He was very much surprised and did not expect her to come to him at such an hour, whereupon he asked, what can he do to help her? And the next question she asked was, she asked what he knows about love. She tried to explain to him that she understands that he rejected her proposal. She understands how into which family one is born. But love is not something that just arises. She complimented that when two people spend time together and get to know each other better, there was a chance that they would both fall in love with each other, and asked that he give her that chance, specifically asking that he leave her up north a little longer so he could really get to know her. No. He asked her if this was really what she wanted or not, and then she was already excited, knowing that he would agree. And she also told him that she would be very grateful if he would let her be courted while she was here, after which she thought to herself that perhaps she had been hasty with that. He backed her up and said that he would have no problem giving her that chance until Her Majesty's trip was over, especially after the favor she had done for him at the ball. However, there was one but. He would do it if she got her sister's permission first, because she would have to approve it. That depends on Nadia, he said. I told him they should keep their reputation in mind. She'll deal with her sister herself. Whereupon she saw that he kept the flower she'd given him, and they grinned at each other. A few days later, Nadia was at such a hard workout where she was getting very tired. Her sister, seeing how hard it was for her, was worried about her. Walked over and decided to ask if she still wanted to recant before it was too late, and implied that if she came out to insist on staying, just let her know that her sister wasn't going to indulge her. But Nadia said there's no way she's giving up, and 15 more approaches for the rest of the workout. They had a disagreement after practice, and her sister Arwen didn't understand how Nadia was willing to do all this for some man who had insulted her in the beginning. But in defense of the Duke, Nadia said it was a silly misunderstanding and he said no such thing, and began to tell how it was all really like that and why she had fallen in love with him. Also, the sister thought to herself, if Nadia knew about what the Duke had said about her declaration of love, and told Nadia that she couldn't help but think about it, and the pain it would inevitably cause. After training, she was very tired and bent down to rest. Then her sister half expected a good moment and told Nadia how weak she was. That's why she can't leave her here alone. Then Nadia thought about what if she proved strong enough to last here. Would her sister allow her to stay here herself? They agreed that would happen. What she hadn't said then was to let Arwen give her any challenge she wanted. They had agreed that they would have a duel on the morning of the day her sister left, and if Nadia won, her sister wouldn't even say a single word to her. After the sisters separated, Arwen met the Duke, who would advise her to be gentle with Nadia, for her hands were shaking like leaves in the wind. But Arwen said it shouldn't bother him, for it was none of his business. Afterward, she immediately told Isaac the doctor to get right to work on Nadia's hands after practice. It was 2 weeks before Her Majesty and Nadia's sister left. And at practice, the coach was telling Nadia to put in a lot of effort, or he would add 5 more approaches. The Duke's aide approached him and said that Lady Nadia had been undergoing intense training for a few days, and it seems that she is too hard. That's why he fears an impossible challenge for her, and told the Duke that maybe he should have denied her request, but he ignored him. The aide then asked if he was listening to him, and the Duke said not to lecture him, and added that he had told her to get Lady Arwen's permission herself. When the Duke was lying in the bathtub from the window, he heard a servant with Lady Nadia walking after the training, and she said that her whole body was covered in sweat, in addition to also hurting, after which he wondered. After that, the Duke wanted to meet Nadia and said he heard about the duel, then asked how she was feeling, and he said he didn't think it would go this far. Nadia easily replied that she would only need to land 1 decent blow to win, then remarked that did she really hear the music of anxiety. Then I looked into his eyes and saw that his brown eyes suited him very well, as if a whole universe was hidden in them, and said that I could even drown in them. The Duke misunderstood this, and asked what she was carrying again. Then Nadia was very disappointed, and asked why he refused her again, after which she started asking for permission, and he said that if it wasn't a second marriage proposal, he would try to honor it. And then she said she wanted to use his bathroom after her workouts. She was so not expecting him to allow it that she got very excited and couldn't believe it. Then he took out a jar, gave it to her and told her that it was water mixed with mint and lemon and wine, explaining that it was to keep it from drying out during training. He told her to come an hour early the next day for training. He would give her a couple of extra lessons so she would definitely beat Mistress Arwen. She was so in love with him that she was sure it was another declaration of love. Upon hearing this, he said that she didn't have to accept the offer. Let her do what she thought was right. She then said that she definitely wanted to do just that. He told her okay, and not to expect leniency, and then wanted to make sure one last time that she didn't want to take it back. She said no way. Then she regretted the day she had spoken those words. He had been very harsh with her in training, as if they weren't acquaintances, and she was only doing his task, but it was all just to make her win. Besides, she had agreed to it on her own. When there was one day left in the duel, her whole body was very sore because the training was very hard. She thought about not even being able to go to practice, after which she wondered if she could ask Duke Cortana to be more lenient today at least. But when she thought of asking him, he would say she had agreed to it herself, and let her not complain now, and she decided to do things differently. She went out early that morning, and Viscount Dalton, the doctor, came up behind her with a bouquet in his hand and asked her what she was doing here. She said she was looking for herbal remedies, because she had sprained her leg yesterday at practice. He became very worried, and said that she should not exert herself today and offered to take a look. After looking at her leg, he said he wasn't sure she could stand up to her sister, and said that as her doctor he was very worried about her. Somehow her injury was keeping him busy. She needed to rest today. Then she said she couldn't, since she had agreed to extra training from Duke, and he realized it was all because of him, and she only wanted to stay here for him. Asked her that. After which she said it was personal, and he apologized and said he was out of line, for which he pointed out that the case sees that it didn't happen. He helped her and bandaged her leg. It reduced the pain a bit, but at least it wouldn't make her miss practice. Then she saw Duke walking down the street, so she ran up behind him and asked him if there was going to be practice today. He said they needed to clear something up and asked her if he was really the only one she cared about. And after that, he gave her some advice and told her that whoever her opponent was, he would always be stronger for her. That's why she has to watch the balance and the distance between them, and wait for your opponent to let down his defenses so you can strike. After which he also said that this class was over and there would be no more training fights. She needed to rest today. When the Duke was about to leave, she stopped him and considered whether to tell him about the gift or not, but did not dare. As she sat in the bathroom, she couldn't make up her mind to give or not to give. So she decided to weed the petals out of the flowers, and she still didn't know what to do. She then went to his office and continued to do the same thing in his office when he came in. She said that he came back very early. Seeing the gift in her hands, he thought it was her second proposal. She said that this time, then he assumed it was a parting gift, but she pointed out that it was neither. Said it was her little gift, a token in appreciation. He looked at it very closely, not hooting to see what it was. She thought to herself that it was as if he was checking, after which she said that if he didn't want to accept, she would take it back. But he did remark that he liked it a lot, even a lot. Afterward they sat down and she told him that why he was mad at her, she thought so because he missed practice. But he pointed out that it was only because he was worried about her ankles, and in no way was he offended by her. Afterward, he took her hand and kissed it gently. She was very surprised and did not know what to do. Her heart was beating very hard. The Duke said that in this way he expressed his gratitude for such a precious gift. He then got up and walked away, telling her that she needed to rest before the fight. And she thought to herself, why did she get butterflies in her stomach just from him kissing her hand? She then caught up with him and offered to test the toothpaste. He turned to her. She stood on her toes and said that if he used it, there would not even be any bad odor even from such a close distance, and remarked that his eyes seemed even more beautiful, whereupon he said that apparently she had already regained her strength, and she was sure to do well tomorrow. Afterwards, she was a little disappointed that she had walked up to him, almost hugged him, and he had responded so rudely. She realized again how tough a nut he was. She immediately said, "Gosh, look at the time," and realized that she needed to go to bed. After all, one would need that in duel. Please say goodnight, and ran off. The next day came, and just before the duel, her sister told her to be careful not to hurt herself. And her sister Nadia, squeezing out of herself as she was very afraid to say anything, said the same thing to Arwen. After which she thought to herself that she had been honing her skills for weeks, and it was high time she showed what she was worth. When she found it, she stumbled, for her shoelaces were untied, and the Duke told her so. Afterward, sitting down to her, he said he'd better tighten it tighter, for he didn't want her to hurt her leg again. He also remarked that she wasn't at all talkative today, she must be nervous, and advised her to do the same thing she did last night, and that's when victory, not his shirt, would be in her hands. She was very surprised that the Duke was very attentive, and asked him why he was showing such attention to one who had been rejected. He said he just wished her luck that she would win. At the very beginning of the battle, she once again remembered the Duke's words and realized that her goal was to strike one blow, not to win. Therefore, she should focus on her goal and attack swiftly. As the fight progressed, her sister was surprised as she realized that Nadia was a bit faster than she thought and could have guessed. But only Nadia realized that her strength was already running low, and when they separated slightly before continuing the fight, Duke told her that her grip wasn't strong enough to withstand her sister's blows, so she needed to find a way to keep her distance, and advised her to choose a strategy. He also implied that he wanted to see soon what tactics she would follow. Nadia realized she didn't stand much of a chance and decided to think very hard, then realized she needed to loosen her grip on her sister's confusion. Thus, her sister thought that she had lowered her sword and surrendered, and also lowered her defense, and at this time, Nadia began to attack. Then Arwen realized this move and Nadia's magnificent plan, and said that Nadia had won, and as she had promised, she was allowing her to stay in the north, and told her, "Thank you very much." And since all the conditions of the battle had been met, Her Majesty declared Nadia the winner. When all the preparations were completed and Majesty was ready to depart for home, then Her Majesty expressed great thanks to the Duke for the warm welcome they had received, and he also wished them a good journey. After that, Arwen also said a few words to the Duke and asked him to take care of her beloved sister, after which she called Nadia over and gave her the golden key. As it turns out, it is the symbol of the heir in the Holheit family. With this key, she can and is entitled to enjoy the privileges of their family, and she can borrow absolutely any amount of money. Arwen told her to use it and hoped that home would always be a place for her to soothe her soul. Either way, such power was necessary when she was alone in an unfamiliar place. Also, Arwen asked for a promise to Nadia that she could take care of herself, and Nadia did so. As soon as they started to leave, Lady Nadia said she felt dizzy and began to faint. The doctor, as well as the Duke, were in shock and couldn't imagine that such a thing could happen. Just like that. The Duke at once ordered a doctor to be summoned, but as the doctor was on the spot, he said it was not necessary, and after quickly examining her, said she had a fever and rapid breathing. The duel seemed to have taken a heavy toll on her health. He then kissed the side of her head and said he would take her to her chambers, but the Duke revived and said that it was he who should do it, and no one else. Afterwards he carried her home and wondered why she was so light and really realized that the training had taken such a toll on her. She was very tired. Just as the doctor started to take her home and the Duke stopped him, they had a conflict. The doctor became jealous and said it was all because of the Duke and the extra training, and it was all his fault. But they split up, and it all worked out. When Nadia was rested and ready to get up, the Duke was at her side and told her that she was the strangest person he had ever met. Perhaps that's why he can't stop thinking that she could have been an angel accompanying him on this damn life journey. And he remembered his curse. After being dumped in the same pit with the remains of his favorite horse, he became very sensitive to smells. The places where he had spent his entire life were suddenly foreign to him, and he began to realize that even water and wind have their own scent. And he remembered the situation, how the servants had discussed what they had heard, how he had said the wind smelled unpleasant. And then those around him began to perceive him differently. They feared the non-leading, rambunctious Claude Cortana. It all keeps him down, and so does Nadia. But a good soul has appeared, like one that has shone a light on his world mired in darkness, he said. The feelings he began to feel around her soon became habitual, and it was as if it had absolutely always been that way. And then it turned into a curiosity unexplainable that disturbed his peace. Afterward, he started telling her that she was constantly curious about his intentions, wanting to know why he had been good to her, even after he had rejected her proposal. He was willing to answer all her questions, so don't think here that he could be alone after he met someone who really understood him. So he told her to get better quickly. When she woke up, I was her doctor to her. He began to say that he had been terribly worried when she fainted, and she had not expected to see him and thought he would go away with Her Majesty and her sister. But he said there was just no way he could leave her like that, and her sister was gone. Not today, but like 3 days ago. She was very surprised, and didn't understand how she had been unconscious for 3 days. Then she also thought of her sister, who upon hearing about it would immediately come back to take her home, which would probably escalate the whole situation. He replied to her that he had written a letter to her sister, which read as follows. As a physician to Lady Nadia, worried about her condition, I feel it is right for me to stay with her. If you would be so kind as to grant me permission to do so, I vow to take care of the lady until she returns to the capital. I hope for your understanding. She thanked him profusely for doing just that, and as Dalton was about to leave, she asked where the Duke was if he happened to know. He looked at her and said that they had gotten too close lately, and that he could definitely answer her question, but given her condition, it would be better not to. At that moment she sensed something very ominous in his words. She realized even then what it meant. At that point, she apologized to him and said she didn't understand what he meant, and asked him to tell her where he was and that she would be okay. Dalton replied that the Duke wasn't here and that it had happened the day she had fainted. He had left the manor and had not returned. She started to worry that it was all her fault and asked if it was her fault, but Dalton reassured her that it was a coincidence and he was fine. It wasn't her fault. He was also very worried about her, so he took the liberty of asking her if she was really that worried about him. Hearing that, she had never seen Isaac act like this before after they had spent some time together up north. She was used to him, but I don't think she'd ever seen him like this before today. At that moment, Juliana knocked on their door and asked to come in. She also ran up to Nadia and began to rejoice that she was awake and in good condition. She also whispered in Nadia's ear that his lordship had asked to be informed that she could use his office if she wished, and handed her a basket. As it turned out, in that basket was the bath oil she was talking about. Nadia was curious, so she tried to make it herself. She thanked Dalton for taking care of her, and thought again that being around a man who was so vehemently opposed to bathing was against her principles. From now on, she will take care of her health on her own. That's why they don't need to see each other so much anymore. Dalton was very disappointed, but didn't give any sign and said he was very pleased to see the lady smile and left, wishing the ladies a wonderful rest. Nadia herself went for a swim, and she really liked the scent. Juliana was very happy to hear that. Also, Juliana said she wanted to confess something. She's actually been catching you thinking that she gets excited when she's making Nadia's bath for a while now, and that's not all she had to say. She also has a smile on her face when she does the clean laundry, and sometimes she bumps into the freshly laundered laundry to smell the sunshine. She explained to Lady Nadia that the smell of sunlight sounded a little strange, but Nadia said she knew what she was talking about. Her heart tingled strangely every time she saw her clean hands. Realizing all this, Nadia suggested a bath. He told her to think about it, for it was the same as a cook having to taste the food to know what they were cooking. It would be the same thing to bathe. When Juliana left, leaving the oil and towel for Nadia, the lady remembered that the Duke had left her an office and allowed her to use the bathroom, which meant she could sit and use the bathroom as much as she wanted. She figured that was how he showed his concern for her, and the Duke was definitely interested in her. She couldn't believe it all, for she was truly happy. After she got out of the shower, she didn't realize what was happening, and it seemed like she was having déjà vu. Also, when leaving the bathroom, she snagged the shampoo bottle and it fell off the shelf when she bent down to pick it up. And as she stood back up, she started to say, "Juliana, I'm so sorry." And looking up, she saw his lordship. As it turned out, he wasn't going anywhere. They both didn't expect to see each other here. It was very strange for them. Also, when he was about to leave Nadia alone, he slipped and fell. They met much later in the study and wanted to say something to each other. And then Nadia started first, and said that she had spilled oil while she was bathing, and asked if anything hurt his lordship. He said he was fine and he shouldn't apologize for what happened. It wasn't intentional, but he should have been more careful. And explained that he'd certainly hoped to see her sooner, but not under these circumstances. After which he immediately asked how she was feeling, if she was strong enough to take a bath. But then he also immediately laughed something off. She replied that nothing was wrong, everything was fine, she was just happy, and thanked him for being concerned about his health. She then said that she had heard him tell the maids that she could use his bathroom. She then showed him her biceps and told him she was fine and felt great, asking him in return how he felt. He answered her that if she meant that he slipped up, he was fine. And she swept up. What about the other thing she'd been told about something happening in the duchy's territory when she fainted, and asked if it had anything to do with her or not? He replied that his hope was that no one would know about it. But apparently it was already known to everyone. So he told them that there was a place north of here that they called the Kingdom of God. And as the name implies, they believe the Lord rules there. A few days ago to him, he had already collapsed to the ground the moment Nadia passed out, and it was reported to him the morning after the tests had fallen ill. When this was told to him, he needed to go check it out right away. That's why he was away for a while. He was told that there were earthquakes in those territories, and multitudes of water rushed onto the sacred ground where they had built an altar. It was said that the water was scalding hot, as if it was a sign that God was angry. Moreover, it was rumored that he was the one responsible for it because he had put Lady Nadia in danger by causing her to faint. When they got there was still steam over the water, and they didn't understand exactly what had happened or what it was all for. No one knows why this happened, or where these rumors about Lady Nadia came from. His assistant tried to find the reason, but it was extremely difficult. Then the Duke said he couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something, and he was aware of the absurd rumors about his bathing, and could understand why people were afraid of what they didn't know. But this talk about Lady Nadia, why her fainting at all was connected with him and the eruption of water, he said, and how the gossip could have spread in so short a time, it was very incomprehensible to all. One has to take into account that this may have been done intentionally. Then another massive earthquake started, and they decided to quickly go for cover. But luckily it was over very quickly. Upon hearing this, Nadia was very frightened and also very surprised that he was able to see hot water rushing out from under the earth. But he also explained to her that it all just happened to coincide with her fainting. He also explained to her that if he had heard the gossip before he witnessed it, he too would have believed that he had angered God. He told her that it was her that he thought of at that moment, and then Nadia was speechless. And just like that, as soon as he remembered that there was someone who believed in him, all his fears were abruptly lost. And then he decided to go back. He wanted very badly to see Nadia quickly at that moment. He explained to her. Nadia became suspicious. How could a person change so much in one night? Whereupon she tried to sort out and help him with the eruption of the water, for she believed that the movement of the water had nothing to do with the wrath of God. She was so sure of this that the Duke was surprised. How does she know all this? She then called out that this hot spring was called a geyser, and explained to him that it was, simply put, a natural phenomenon in which hot water bursts out from beneath the earth. And if it happens periodically, it is called a geyser. Then the Duke was very much surprised when he realized that it had nothing to do with the rumors of God's wrath. When the lady understood completely and dealt with the situation, she said that it was not a sign of anything at all. She explained to him that it was more like a blessing because bathing in hot springs was very healthy. After which she reminded that if you bathe in them regularly, you can prevent inflammation, improve blood circulation and skin health, which is good for absolutely everyone. The Duke thought she thought he was stupid, and with a slightly upset face he asked how she knew all this. But Nadia looked the other way on that side and told him that all she liked to do was read unusual books. So she knows it all, and anyway we can benefit from it, she said. For her to tell him of the benefit they could derive from the situation, she asked that the Duke give her his hand, to which he was very much surprised and thought she wanted him to be so close to her. But she explained to him that it had been a long time since she'd paid him any attention or anything else, and he had. Afterward, he escorted her to her bedroom to rest. Thanking him for walking him all the way through, he said he didn't want her to pass out again, so he walked her through. But Nadia said she felt very well, and he didn't have to worry about it, because her doctor Viscount Dalton had checked on her several times. Then the Duke was stunned after hearing that. He immediately realized that there was something wrong here, and to her the question stood beside him as it began. Then he got the answer that he was standing really close by, and he became very offended and clutched his head with his hand. Then Nadia thought to herself, did they really have a fight? What could have happened that caused such a reaction? The Duke explained that he was a little disappointed, for he was just as completely beside himself with her until he had to leave. Nadia remembered that she had dreamed that she had been called a kitten, but when she woke up she couldn't understand who had done it. And now, apparently, she realized that it was the Duke, because he was with her all the time, according to him. Afterward, Duke said there was one thing he wanted to clarify, and Nadia seconded and said there was one thing they both needed to discuss. Then Nadia had the brilliant idea to say it about 3 at the same time. Duke agreed. And then about 3, Nadia said he should call her kitten. And the Duke on the count of 3 said they should get engaged, and they both had incomprehensible expressions on their faces. The Duke was astonished, and said he hadn't expected her to do that. He had no idea that she wanted to be called by an affectionate nickname. It would be hard for him, but he would try since she was so willing. Afterward, Nadia asked him what he had said about getting engaged, for he had not long ago still rejected her proposal. and was now making it himself. He explained to her that during the time she was bedridden, time just went on forever for him, and he wanted to see those bright, kind eyes again. That was why it made him wonder, why he couldn't stop worrying about her. He also explained to her that it was at that moment that he tried to imagine what she would have said to him if she had been around. That was when he realized something too. He apologized to her and told her that he had been a complete fool, and he should have accepted her proposal back at the ball for Nadia. It was very unexpected, and she was surprised. Duke also mentioned that maybe his head was finally recognizing what his heart felt. He decided so because he knows now that at that moment she was the only person who understood him, and she became truly special to him. After which he became very curious as to how she thought now, for her first proposal had been because of her desire for a bath, and he decided to ask this of her, what she thought now about it, whether she loved him as he was now. When he asked that question, Nadia left the room in a panic and didn't know what to do. Then Juliana came up to her and asked if she was all right. Juliana said she'd come in a few minutes ago, so Nadia figured she'd listened and heard everything. After which she remarked that the Duke said he could not take his eyes off her, and that every part of her was beautiful, and that he now wished to be betrothed. She was very happy, and the emotion overwhelmed her, and she was sure she would soon be married, she told the maid. Then Juliana thought to herself whether or not this meant that the lady and his lordship had feelings for each other and had fallen for each other. Then, walking back into the room, the Duke once again relayed the question to Nadia. Nadia replied that he was right, but if he was asking if she felt love for him, she couldn't answer that question. After which she noticed that she was just very much drawn to him, and noticed that it was the deep voice, the warm, strong hands, and the ochre-colored eyes, and that he's so good to her, yet he pretends he isn't. It's all very pulling for her, and there's nothing she doesn't like about him, and there's nothing she can do about it. Then she realized that she had been too frank, and tears began to well up in her eyes. Then she realized she was sorry in her heart for saying it right now. Then the Duke turned to her and said that her beaming smile, the fact that she was honest in conversation, and he was absolutely the same way, and he was madly drawn to her. What's with the heel heads? She's all beautiful, he thought. He realized he couldn't take his eyes off her. He hesitated for a moment, but realized that maybe it had even been that way all along. They both didn't know what it was. Love, or it was just them stupefied and the unusual luck that had fallen to their fate. That's why he wanted to make her his bride, he told her. He then took her hand, put it to his face, and asked her if the cum was behind his proposal. After all, she was the one who said that two people should spend more time together and get to know each other better to be sure of their feelings for each other. After that, he said that he would make an official app very soon, as befits him. But now he had to say it, as he is not a patient man. Then he put his arm around her and said right to her face if she would do him the honor of becoming his wife. A little later, Nastya was standing on the balcony, and it seemed to her as if a warm breeze was embracing her. She had said the moment Juliana dragged her to the balcony that there was no way she should stand on the balcony because the air was getting colder in the fall evenings, and there was no way she could get sick. Necessarily I realized that, she said. Quite right, for she can in no way embarrass the Duke again. Then the Duke came into her room and told her that he was going to have dinner, and also offered to do it with her. He embarrassed her very much. From the outside, Juliana thought to herself that they had both changed a lot since he proposed, and very well for the better. During dinner, the Duke asked if Nadia would have some free time after dinner. Afterwards, he remarked that it seemed he still hadn't shown her the Nadan. She didn't take it as if he was calling her on a date, and thought to herself that naturally she had time. Especially for him, there was plenty of time. But to him she replied that she was a little busy, but thought she could spare some time so it didn't seem so easy, and they arranged to meet after dinner at the entrance. When they had finished dinner and were ready to go, but a kitchen date so to speak, the Duke's aide came in and said that the investigation team had arrived at the estate and had begun their discussion. Then the Duke was very unhappy that it was now, and as he started to leave, Nadia was surprised and didn't understand what was happening. Why right now? What about their date? Also, when he was already pulling away because she was consumed by her feelings, she completely forgot about the whole wrath of God thing. Then she offered to help him, and he agreed. She said she was doing her best because she was also interested in it, and when they were almost outside, from above they saw a group of people standing around deciding how investigations would be conducted. Some said it amounted to sedition. Others said they could just track down these gossipers and teach them a lesson. Seeing this, Nadia was excited and asked, "What else happened? What's wrong?" But Duke said they are just trying to decide which direction to take the investigation. Then she didn't think to herself that they were blaming someone for bringing God's wrath upon them because of some stupid hot spring. Why it was so useless to discuss it and how stupid they were. When they approached this group of people, they let them ask his lordship why Ice joined them. But he's made it clear that he's decided to get engaged to her. That's why she's with him now. She then spoke up and also said herself that she was not yet officially his fiancée, but wanted to help in any way she could. And so she wondered what this wrath of God that everyone was talking about was all about, and if anyone and anything could explain about it. One of the crowd said there were rumors that God had come to be furious with the Duke for misbehaving because of his behavior. People claim that the Duke of the North bathes in water that can carry diseases, thereby cooperating with the devil, and it is also said that his lordship is under the influence of an evil spirit. 3. Whose hand has reached even to him who has received God's blessing. Then Lady Nadia was very surprised and told them that all the Duke did was to take baths, and people say he is possessed by the devil. Why are they so stupid, she thought to herself. Then the Duke said they would come back to that now, and decided to find out who this man with God's blessing was. Nadia thought it was about her, and also thought to herself at the same moment what a strange turn of events it was, and that she couldn't understand anything. Then the crowd said they heard about the lady being unconscious for a long time. And after a miracle, she woke up and she was doing great. They also said they knew that after she regained consciousness, she visited the temple to offer prayers of thanksgiving. But Nadia remembered and began to feel angry to herself that this was not the case at all. And she had visited the temple only to express her indignation, but in no way her gratitude. And there is also another news. The people said that that water is scalding hot because God came to be enraged at the sins committed by the devil. The Duke said so. To find the source of the rumors, they would go instead of holding some suspicious meeting. Then, in the carriage, Nadia asked the Duke if he knew why these people were gathering today. The Duke replied that it seemed that they wanted to make people believe the rumors were true and win them over to their side. Then Nadia was a little pensive, and the Duke thought she was not well, and just in case asked her how she was feeling. But Nadia answered that she was just a little thoughtful and decided to meditate. She wondered why everyone had such a strong aversion to bathing, but the Duke replied that most likely this perception of water had always existed and had reached even to their days. The Duke began to tell him that, according to historical records, about 100 years ago, a plague wiped out the entire continent, and the monsters carrying the disease died en masse. And those who fed on their infected corpses fell into madness, for they parted on humans, and then they died themselves. Blood and other secretions filled every corner of the world, and soon found their way into the water channel. And only then did the servants of the temple and the magic tower decide to use the fire of purification to burn everything that was contaminated. And it was after that peace prevailed, the Duke said. Afterward, he reminded us that the muddy water that people called the water of death had also been cleansed. Nadia said that in the end, it meant that everything was fine now and it was safe to swim, because the causes of the illness had been eliminated. But the Duke corrected her and said that, you see, then they were destroyed completely. It was the doctors who assured them to stop washing. That's why everyone was so afraid and distrustful of it. After all, they have frankly stated that the infection comes through skin vapors while bathing and so on. Then he said that she had nothing to worry about, and if what she claims is true, it seems really impossible to get sick from the wrath of God. And then Nadia told his lordship not to worry, because Nadia would take care of the problem no matter what. Then the Duke took her in his arms and she was just surprised. Her face turned red very quickly, but the Duke said he really appreciated her willingness to help. But perhaps he advised she should refrain from overexcitement, and she said that she would remember that, and also remarked that if he had any hopes about it, she would try to do her best to help him in his affairs. She would even be willing to die for him, she said. Whereupon the Duke remarked that he had not expected such self-sacrifice. Whereupon he asked what relationship she was in, or what she had witnessed. He also asked that she stay safe while she was near him. He wanted that very much. When they arrived at that very meeting, there were so many people there, and she could not believe that they had all come to a meeting about the wrath of God. Then, during all of this, some guy got on the table and everyone started asking what he was doing and calling for the host to get this nutcase off the table. And he had already begun to shout that he brought important news for everyone, and very soon great danger would befall everyone here in the north. Then he said, Do people know that in the kingdom of God there are streams of water bursting out from under the earth? And do they realize that this is how the wrath of God is expressed? He started yelling that the stories about the Duke's obsession with water turned out to be true, and he himself did, brainwashing them. But people didn't all believe it, and they said it couldn't be, for his lordship, and there were many who supported him in it. Then he asked her, since she felt so strongly about it, should they really turn a blind eye to all these signs, and remarked that if this went on, something very terrible might happen. And he said that he had heard something out of this, that a noble lady and blessed of God had also fallen ill because of the devil's quest. The lad remarked that he couldn't believe such a tragedy had happened during the fertility season, and he was very worried about the future of the North. Really worried. Then from the crowd people started saying that when this was brought up, he should say that his son had recently felt sick, although he had never been sick before. And the guy who was standing next to him said that they say the crops this year will be very bad because of the severe drought this year. Then Nadia absolutely understood how they had it all going on, and that's why they were inciting people, and how. Also, the person you got on the table started shouting that they should be worried that God's wrath would soon consume the entire Naden as well. And eventually the whole north would become flooded in boiling water that would eventually burst into flames. Then the people began to ask what they should do, and whether this meant that they would all die. After asking what they should do and how they should be saved, they received the answer that the Duke should stop cooperating with the devil. He should ask for forgiveness until the rage subsided, and also the people should enlist the support of the temple. And then some guy from the second floor yelled out what would happen if the Duke refused to comply with these demands. And then Nadia remembered that this guy on the street was still standing there with his glasses on, but now he was completely different. People started saying that the Master of the North would never do such a thing, and the great Duke is a mighty war hero. He will sort it out even if he has to kneel before God. But someone again started saying, who even believes all this stuff? It's complete nonsense. Haven't they heard what they say about water coming out of the ground? That's the ordering line of it all. When this instigator started to leave, Duke and Nadia and his assistant decided that they needed to follow him and sent a group of people after them. They also hoped that they would be able to catch everyone. The aide then asked Nadia if she had found any evidence to disprove all these rumors. And she said of course she has everything, because an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. If they're going to involve God, then they should do the same. That's why she asked that the Herzum, that is, the Duke's aide, spread the gossip that she was ill. But to him it seemed like it would only make things worse and make things worse. And they were convinced that it was the devil's quest that had made her sick. She said that's exactly what she wanted, and figured they would show them how to really incite and fudge the facts. When they entered, people wondered who dared to commit such a dangerous act. The Duke said it would probably be better if he came alone tomorrow, for he was anxious about his health. Thus they pretended to dance the facts. Nadia was super happy, because everything had succeeded, and now their zone was turned on her, which meant it was time to put on a show. A little later, Lady Nadia was putting on makeup, and when Juliana came into the room, Nadia asked her if she looked too lively. Maybe she should put on a little more powder. And then Nadia trusted Juliana, because she had 5 years of experience under her belt, and they did everything as Nadia wished. Then the Duke came into the room and said that he had come to accompany her. Since they were done, it might as well set out on their journey. When they got there again, they began to pretend that she was very ill, and he would suggest to her that she lean on him to make her feel a little better, and that she thanked him and dealt pretending that she felt too weak. People looked at them from outside and were sure that his beloved must be terribly ill. They discussed among themselves how pale she was, and that was why they thought he came to pray every day. Then one of the men ran to them and apologized, but also offered his help. He introduced himself, and his name was Gale. He said that he had seen the Duke praying here every day, and he had wondered very much why, but now he finally realized that it was all for his health and his beloved. In response, Nadia saw that Gale seemed to be suffering from some kind of skin disease, and wondered very much if he was to receive treatment, for he seemed a very kind man. But Duke also asked Nadia if she was willing to accept this guy's help, and when he passed, the guy named Gale was very surprised, and didn't understand how he knew that name. It appeared very familiar to him. Afterwards, Nadia said that she really appreciated all of this, and it's okay. She wants to go on her own, even if it takes longer. Gale again said he wanted to help, but they said they wanted to go this way on their own. And leaving, the only thing they asked Gale to do was to help them disperse the crowd. they'd like to pray in silence. He said that of course they could count on her. He'd do it right. Then the lady and the Duke went up to the waterfall. They liked it very much, for it was very beautiful there. The Duke said that when he had been here alone, he had never thought of it being so beautiful. They were very pleased that everything was going according to plan and the way they had planned. They were very happy that their plan was working, and he thought it was definitely a brilliant idea, and they were really, truly accomplices. She was very surprised when he made that clear, and she thought he was already hinting about their marriage. Then the Duke uttered the phrase that hot springs awaited them for their honeymoon. Nadia was so surprised that she stumbled and fell into the water, but the Duke immediately picked her up and said that it looked like his fiancée wasn't going to let him take his eyes off her for a second. And afterwards Nadia apologized to him and promised that she would be more careful from now on. Also told him that she knew their plan could fail if she got hurt and realized they would probably never be able to take a bath again, but she was too excited. The Duke told her to wait a moment, for she had gotten it completely wrong. Then he remarked that he was only worried about her well-being, but nothing more. He said there was no way he wanted to see her pass out again. As he looked at her, she realized that in those moments when they looked into each other's eyes, she could just feel herself burning from the inside out. Then she asked him to put her on the ground first, but he noticed that her shoes were soaked through. She was also shivering a lot. He thought it was from the cold, but later realized it wasn't, and he thought she was also very sensitive to physical contact. Whereupon he took her hand and said that they people adapt quickly, and impossibilities arise one familiar feeling, after which he remarked that he is sure that he is really the only one who can help her get used to it and get rid of that shivering. He's the only one. And at that moment there was the perfect moment for a kiss. But a very large wave appeared and came crashing down near them and startled them. And then they abruptly saw a rainbow. They started discussing that the water eruption lasts about 5 minutes. And then they decided that since they were already here, they could find out the frequency with which it happens, and decided that they should do it after all. The hot water made the lady's hand look like it was really super dirty, and she thought she couldn't afford for him to see her like that. So she ran and hugged him so he wouldn't see her dirty hands. The next day the plan succeeds. The story they made up spreads among the people, thanks to the believers who were then in God's kingdom. Crowds of people gather around the place. "I hope to get a blessing for myself," said the Duke. Nadia replied that it was very wonderful. Very good news. While this was going on, Herkson, the Duke's assistant, came in, and he looked very tired. Then Nadia asked him why she thought he looked, shall we say, more and more exhausted. He explained that it was all because he was haunted by nightmares about Mrs. Arwen of all countries kicking down the door and breaking in here after hearing news of her sister who was insanely ill. Then Duke said so. He would have to spend one more night after the upcoming announcement in the God realm. He could take a vacation to get some sleep. And he said that he had nothing to worry about. Even if Mistress Arwen lies almost there by her presence, he would be the one to take care of the problem, so I myself could relax. At that point, Juliana walked in on Nadia and asked her what kind of makeup she wanted to do today specifically, to which she replied that it was a big day, so she probably wanted to come out healthy and full of energy. Then Nadia said that he should look natural, as if you all weren't there. She didn't quite understand what she meant. And then Nadia repeated that she wanted to say that she wished brightly, but modestly. Juliana said she would try her best to like it. Nadia said she can already see how after the announcement, and she's hoping that things will just go according to plan and nothing will be out of order. Also, for some reason, she decided to remember that she hadn't seen Isaac, her doctor, in a very long time. But she later remembered that she had run into him at the estate not too long ago, and he had turned out to be very busy. Then Juliana said she had something to tell Nadia, specifically about Isaac. She said she was in the library the other day and completely by accident. And at that moment, the assistant Duke burst into the room and said that he had very bad news and they were facing a big problem. The girls were very surprised. Then he said that the group they sent after the instigator in Naden had located the very instigator of the meeting and eventually found him. But he was already dead. Herzog asked what happened to the man who had jumped on the table, to which Herzog said that he too had been recovered and had fortunately confessed to being paid by the instigator. But shortly afterward he also died of a sudden attack. No one could control it. They realized that things were very bad, as the only two people who could lead them to the culprit of it all had been eliminated. But the damage had already been done, and all they could do now is to try to execute the rest of the plan without any problems. As Lady Nadia walked down the stairs to meet the Duke, she pondered who could even be behind all of this. A criminal. That sounded even more dangerous than she had originally thought. Juliana noticed that Nadia had really started to get nervous lately. Then they met Isaac on the stairs, and Nadia was really very surprised. They said hello and said they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Isaac began by saying that he had supposedly heard that she wanted to announce her engagement that very day. Naderzi thought how happy she was to see him, but how much time he had, and she really hoped he wasn't going to stop her because of the gossip about her illness. Isaac said that everyone likes love stories, and it seems like people can't stop talking about how attentive he's been to her lately. That's where he learned about the engagement from. He had heard that she had been instrumental in resolving rumors of a connection to the devil, and he couldn't say he was happy to have her in contact with the water that was the cause of all disease, but he would so be smiling and tolerant just this one last time. But he also asked Nadia for a promise that she would put an end to all this talk around the house. Then, as they say, they shook hands and parted. Then she remembered abruptly that Juliana had something to say about Isaac, starting at the library where she had seen something. And then Juliana said it was nothing, and everything was fine. And she thought to herself what a kind man Isaac was, and how wrong she was, and it was also very good that Ice trusted him. She also decided that she shouldn't leave Nadia to worry when Juliana wasn't quite sure what she was guessing. Then the Duke came in and said, "I hope he is ready to go." And they went to pray. When they came, the people were amazed at the way Nadia looked. They believed that she had recovered, for she looked much healthier than she had before. Then they sat down on their knees and began to pray. The Duke said he was thankful that God had blessed them with another miracle, and Nadia gave thanks for the signs from above that he had bestowed upon them. The priest then decided to ask them what exactly they were thankful for, at which point the Duke said that he was sure that these jets of water were not God's wrath, as he had encountered it before. During the war, he suddenly realized he was covered in the blood of monsters, and was constantly haunted by heartbreaking images. The whole crowd began to listen to what he was telling them. He said he was gripped by a sense of terror toward everything, including himself. He felt as if the devil himself were mocking him, so he knelt before the Lord and prayed desperately. He asked for salvation and deliverance from all this horror. It was simply impossible to live like this. And then the people didn't believe that God had answered him, but he confirmed it, and they were very surprised. They couldn't believe their ears that they were hearing it. Then Nadia rejoiced and said that they had almost succeeded in convincing them. And then the Duke decided to finish them off and said that soon after, jets of water erupted from the ground and rained down on his blood-soaked body, washing away everything in his way without a trace. Moreover, he saw with his own eyes how the monsters recoiled from the place where the water came out, and at that moment he realized that it was God's answer. He was blessed by this miracle. Nadia was very pleased that everything was going exactly as he had planned. They were succeeding. Their whole plan was going as it should. To his surprise, from that day on he was no longer haunted by those scary images. So he explained that the reasons for his frequent bathing were that he just wanted to remind himself of God's answer to his prayers. And of course he couldn't create a sister in water, since he was only human. So the best he could come up with was to immerse himself in water, all for the sake of inner peace. And also one fateful day he found that the water had once more burst out of the ground in this holy place. And it was not long before Lady Nadia fainted. He said that God had given her the same blessing that he had given him, and for that he was eternally grateful to him. For him it was as if he had given him a second miracle. He cherished it as the apple of his eye, and it was for this that he was truly grateful to God. Then she let out a few tears so that people would believe it all, and asked the Duke to let them thank their gracious Lord, for she had already been healed twice by grace. Then the priest cheered her and told her that God hears sincere words, and asked if she wanted to say anything more. Then she sat on her knees with the Duke and said they had one for him after all, and the Duke said he was seeking his approval to marry Lady Nadia. He called her the one who shared with him, "This is God's miracle," and that his grace left blessing to be extended to all those in need. Meanwhile, Her Highness was very interested in how Nadia was doing, but her father had said that no news was good news, and she really hoped that was true. Once they talked about it and got the letter from the north, and she thought that meant something bad had definitely happened to her. But her father thought it said how well she was doing. The letter stated that the Mad Duke of the North had announced his engagement to Nadia Goldate in the presence of witnesses. Then they went into shock. They couldn't believe their eyes that they were seeing this letter with their own eyes. Then youngest son Lupin said that perhaps the Karth family had manipulated her for their own gain, given that Claude Cortana's name had come up in some of the worst cases lately. Then his father thought and told his mother that it seems that their son had become even more put out, and since he joined the Magic Tower. Whereupon he began to ask before him an address for coming. Like this, he would not have lashed out if it had not also been about his dear little sister. When his parents didn't believe him and asked him if it was definitely true, he said that some things were exaggerated after all, but he had definitely heard that the Duke was strange. Then his parents definitely threw themselves into shock and started asking him what exactly he meant by the word weird. But all he did was explain to them that there were rumors that he was obsessed with bathing. Because of this, there were rumors that Duke Cartan had gone mad, that he was being controlled by the devil. He later added that that wasn't what they should worry about, but that Nadia had indulged his obsession. Then my father once again exclaimed that it couldn't be, because bathing was strictly forbidden for Nadia, and thought about going and checking on her just in case, to make sure everything was okay. Then they thought that if she really had developed feelings for the Duke, it was very bad. And then the son said that he would go north with Arwen and his sister, and said that the parents could rely on them. After all, they didn't want to experience all that horror again either. Meanwhile, his Duke met with Nadia, in the beginning to discuss how things were going with their rumors. And Nadia said that people not only from all regions of the north, but from all corners of the empire had begun to arrive there, and that it seems they are still wary of going near a place with a hot spring. So most gather in the village where the water drains to. But there is also good news. Thanks to the spring, nearby villages, there is an increase in tourist activity. Then the Duke said that this village was too neglected, it was a mess, and Nadia was able to fix it. It was all thanks to her. After which he said thank you very much and gave her a big hug. Nadia looked at him afterward and thought about the fact that they had grown so close since their engagement, and she seemed about to say something else, but remembering that she wanted to say she'd seen the high priest on a branch hit the hot spring today, I'd say he'd even suggested that Nadia join him. Before that, saying that his body was literally prayed over, and his muscles, his joints, it was like he became a different person. That must be God's blessing, don't you think? That's what he told Nadia. So this was very good news for them, and he also thanked Nadia and said that he was indebted to her for allowing him to witness the manifestation of the Lord's answer, and if she needed any help, that she should feel free to contact him and not be shy. She also recalled that he had seemed like a rather nice man last time, but now she was convinced of that and asked the Duke if he thought the same himself. Also, laughing, she bragged to Juliana that he'd charmed even her socks. Her feet went really bad. Then she abruptly remembered that she already had a man and had just been talking about another man in the presence of her fiancé. She thought she was finished. The Duke said the charm was similar to the high priest and she was quite influenced, but she didn't say that in any way. Then Duke said she had no idea what had opened up in his mind as he waited for her return. After which he said that he probably should have given her a surprise later, which he happened to have accidentally blurted out. And Nadia heard it all and realized that he wanted to surprise her. I got really excited. When she began to ask what the surprise was and whether you had prepared something special for her, the Duke replied that the Herzam should have arrived by now. Afterward, when he came in, the Duke told Nadia to come through with him. When he blindfolded her and led her to the new bathroom, he told her that it was now her room and could be accessed directly from her bedroom. After all, he felt guilty that she had to use his bathtub when she wants to wash herself, so it's very convenient for her. So he really moved Nadia, and she started crying and she started saying, "How did I ever manage to meet the most perfect man in this world?" And they hugged, and she felt that she was truly happy. She was very warm and cozy with him, finally got to do what she had wanted to do all along. For Juliana to use this room from time to time too, as she said she would like to try swimming after seeing people in the hot spring. He had no problem letting her, saying it was as long as she agreed. Let's keep it that way. Then the hot spring is visited, so visited by so many people as she told me, to which she replied that it is completely so, and it has even been given a new name, healing water. A little later she was sitting thinking what she should do, and she thought over the poor idea, and then she realized that if she could think of anything, she would be provided for life. Hertzan heard this and asked her. Afterward, when he asked her again, she said she had absolutely no ideas, at which point the Duke said that Hertzan was quite interested in trade, and there was no need to shy away from it. Then she immediately said she had an idea for a moment about a hot spring water delivery service. Afterwards, Herzen also suggested an idea for a steam and eye mask and hand massage. Nadia approved it and said that there would definitely be a big demand for bath products made of natural ingredients, as it is healthy. Then they decided and shook hands with each other, agreed that they would make money from this hot spring, and decided to continue the dialogue elsewhere. But it turned out that Nadia had forgotten about the Duke. He stopped her by the arm, asked if she'd forgotten anything. And that's when Nadia realized we had to finish with Hertz later, and stayed with Duke, apologized and said she'd been distracted, forgotten he was still around. Then he put his arm around her and whispered in her ear that he deserved some sort of reward, preferably one that showed how much Nadia had enjoyed his surprise. But she didn't say she didn't have anything she could give him now. But in return, she offered to take a walk to the hot spring. It was the only thing she could offer him. And then he was very happy that she was learning so quickly, especially when it came to relationships. But also the Duke said that there must be something she could give him right here and now, and he would really like to have it. So he pulled the intrigue. After that, he took her and kissed her. Nadia liked the kiss very much, and during the kiss she realized that he gave off such a nice, refreshing scent. He was about to end the kiss, but she couldn't pull away and thought to herself, I wish I could hold out a little longer. A little while later, things settled down, and she was sitting at home trying to come up with some business ideas for the hot spring. Then she realized that she was doing the wrong thing, and then she was drugged by that kiss. I couldn't forget it, and it was as if I could feel their lips touching every moment. When she saw that the Duke and the Duke were busy, she decided that she should mind her own business after all, since she had nothing to do alone. And she decided she wanted to start by discussing what she had witnessed yesterday, which was people throwing their clothes around and animals just destroying them. And then she remembered some of the people saying that they really needed a special place to put their clothes to keep them in order. On top of all this, also the stench from the makeshift toilet is just disgusting, and it is simply impossible to be near it. She realized that they were in vital need of proper sanitation, at which point she said that she didn't mind, but suggested that she go home. So Nadia became so nervous that she started looking at her eyes. And at exactly that moment, someone had the nerve to jump out in front of her and rebirth her path. It turned out to be a girl who flew out of the way to say something. Nadia immediately stood in front of her and told her to get out of the way. Otherwise, one would have to face the consequences. But the girl started crying and said that she was not going to threaten the lady in any way. And she asked if she remembered her at all. Her name was Tanya. Then Nadia said she remembered her, and Tanya was very grateful that the lady had prayed to God to send a blessing for her as well. After that, she began to tell that for a long time she had been suffering from unbearable pain in her legs. No cure could be found. But just by touching God's healing water and her feet felt much better. She just experienced God's miracle right on her own and became truly happier. Then Nadia thought the hot spring must be relieving the pain since she was telling it like that. And she was not in a serious condition at first. What treatment methods they had tried, she wondered. Then Nadia held out her hand, gave her a bag and told her to soak it in boiling water and put it on her knees. That should take the pain away completely. Then Tanya said she couldn't accept something so precious from a lady, and Nadia told her to relax, because what she likes best is being here in the north, where Tanya belongs in a place that has become dear to her heart, and asked that Tanya not belittle herself, because Nadia admires people like that who know their worth. Nadia also asked to know what treatments she had tried in the past, and when she found out what they had tried to cure her with, she realized that she urgently needed to find out how many doctors there were here, how they treated, and what remedies people used at home, as it totally sucked, and there was no way you could take that risk. She also wrote it down on a piece of paper, and then Isaac came up to her and asked what she was doing. But she realized that if Isaac saw it, he would definitely start nagging and find out what she was doing. That's why she told him she was just drawing. At that moment, they were abruptly blown all the leaves off the table, and Nadia turned around and saw something strange and thought to herself what he was doing here. As it turned out, it was her brother, and Nadia asked that he not do or say anything since Isaac shouldn't see it. And then he read it out loud, saying it was a business idea for using the hot spring, then asked what it was in general. Nadia was just shocked. She tried to explain what it was, but he just yelled at her and told her that she didn't seem to want to share it with him. She started stuttering whenever she got nervous, after which she asked him what he was even doing here. Then she asked what he was even here and what fates he had, and he said, "Why don't she look for herself?" and handed her the letter. The letter read as follows: "We hereby formally protest against the announcement by the House of Carton of the engagement of Duke Claude Carton and our daughter Nadia Goldet. We have never given our consent to such a thing." She realized it was all about her engagement, but she had to speed things up because of rumors of God's wrath, so she can understand why her parents were so scared. But still, a written protest is nonsense. After reading the letter, she imagined an imaginary father telling her that they had lived. She had indeed crossed swords with her sister and found herself in mortal combat over some duke. She replied that she did, and he said that meant that the fact that she had overexerted herself and ended up on the brink of life and death, after which she had to recover for several days, was also true. Lupin also replied to his father that he should find out more information on the matter first, for he thought that Nadia was being used for the existence of Duke Carton's grand plan. Then a passing bird snatched the business ideas out of his hands, flew through the air, tore them up, and landed on Nadia's head. The bird then spoke Nadia's name, congratulated her on her amazing engagement, and told her that before she swore allegiance to the new version of the North, she would like to invite her over to her place to formally introduce herself. Then the father came out of the letter again and began to say that she didn't need any of this. But the bird said that if she was quite invited to send to Russia by the noble families that served the House of Carton, they couldn't swear allegiance to her. Then the bird said that it could only accept a response from the recipient itself, meaning it got a headache and started to feel dizzy. Everyone abruptly started to worry about it. "Then Lupin will take matters into his own hands and completely sort it out. His father has nothing to worry about," he said. Whereupon the father told the Dalton, that is, the doctor, to take good care of Nadia, and he was the only one they could rely on in the North. And that the doctor replied that the father was not worried, and he assured him that he had devoted himself entirely to the care of the lady. Whereupon Duke Claude came up to Nadia and said that Bone would be waiting for her in her chambers, and he thought she would be very glad to see him. She rejoiced at first, and then for some reason imagining that it was Arwen and she wanted to kill the Duke. She ran sharply there, thinking to herself that there was no way she was doing anything wrong. She abruptly ran into her chambers and started yelling for her sister to wait so she could explain things to her. Then her sister said that she really needed them to talk. When they sat down at the table to discuss the nuances, Arwen gave a letter stating that her parents were against their engagement to the Duke. When he read it, he just didn't understand what the reason was, or why they were against their engagement. I mean, they were fine. Arwen then reminded him that when she left, she had asked him to look after her sister well, but unfortunately an unusual rumor had recently reached their family. They learned that Nadia had fainted due to an unknown illness, and after she woke up, she felt God's realm, which is the most religious place. Later they also learned that she was going to be betrothed to Duke Carton. "Is all this true?" she asked him. Then the brother also said that he wouldn't mind if the Duchess knew the truth with clarity. Afterwards, he noticed that they both claimed to value Nadia. But do they really trust or not? He asked them. Whereupon their sister Nadia interrupted them and told her sister and brother to let them apologize for not telling them about her engagement. She used to be very guilty about it, feeling terrible about her health causing them so much trouble. She then remarked that his lordship was in no way to be seen in all this. It was all his own doing. She wanted to change people's minds and make them see the wrath of God as a blessing. The same is true of the engagement. Her sister thought she was lying, as she saw absolutely no motive in it, and started yelling at her to stop lying to everyone around her. Then Nadia couldn't stand it any longer and said once again that she was in love, and this time for real. Afterwards, Arwen immediately apologized to her, saying that she apologized if she felt they didn't believe in her at all. They were sure it would be better for her if they kept it from her, but apparently now it was time to tell her the truth. Whereupon she began to tell me that once when Nadia was unconscious due to an unknown illness, 8, her doctor Isaac found out that she got this disease when she took a bath. Afterward, they were all very disappointed that this had happened. Then her brother came to her and felt some magic, after which he said that he felt something unusual. So, he checked with spiritual magic, and it turned out that there was no more soul in her body. In other words, it wasn't just a loss of consciousness, but her soul was gone. She wouldn't be able to wake up even if her body was healed. In that moment, Arwen realized why her family had been so overprotective, and also realized that miraculously, Nadia had been living at the same moment she had entered this body. But Nadia said that she had recovered and was feeling good, her health was good, and they didn't need to worry about her anymore, and she would do her best. But Lupin told her no, and that her body had experienced soul loss in an extremely unstable way. And also the connection between soul and body could easily weaken due to external factors. Simply put, if you lost consciousness again, there's a good chance you'll never wake up again, which is why your family is so worried about you. Nadia didn't immediately understand what Lupin meant, but then he pointed out that she was risking her life without even realizing it. All for love, as they say, he said. Now, finally, Nadia also realized why they were so worried, them. She feels their love and care, and therefore feels even worse for causing them trouble. But still, she just can't give up bathing, since she knows for a fact that no one has ever died yet because of hygiene. But she thought to herself how to make her family stop worrying. And then she told her brother and sister that since her time in the north, regular bathing had only improved her health, and asked that they let her prove it, asking her brother for another check on her soul. Lupin agreed, and said it was only on one condition. If he found anything strange, she would go home with them, and she agreed. When he approached her and started checking her out, he suspected something unusual and couldn't figure out what it was. Whereupon everyone threw themselves into a panic and started asking him, what did he discover, and what is he talking about? But he told them that they could both calm down, as in fact it was just the opposite, and there was nothing wrong with Nadia's soul. Besides, she is more stable than before. Even he himself was very surprised at what he saw. Then Arwen's brother and sister hoped she would come home with them. They were very surprised that her soul was okay, but they were also glad that she was okay. Then the brother thought, is it really all due to bathing, as the analyst claims, or is it all due to the power of love? Then Nadia told Arwen about the hot spring, and that there was healing water there, precisely because God himself had blessed and given it to them. She explained that the name came about when people were miraculously cured of their illnesses after bathing in it. And after that she wasn't sure Arwen just wouldn't believe it. After that, Lupin asked her to allow them to visit the God realm as well. Since he was very curious, he wanted to know if it was really capable of stabilizing people's souls. Then Nadia led Arwen to a hot spring and told her that this particular one was called Beluga. She also asked that her sister trust her and just bathe. She then explained that it was completely safe and insisted on taking a swim, after which she went into the water herself and said she was perfectly fine. Then she decided to play a prank on her sister and started pretending to be sick and screaming that she was about to die, but only out of sheer bliss. Arwen then went into the water with Nadia and asked her not to joke around like that anymore because, since she was her sister, she was very worried about her. Afterward, Arwen said, yes, indeed, apparently heals people, and Nadia turned out to be right. Afterwards, she also remarked that it had been a long time since she had seen her so happy and joyful, and she could only guess how Herzog Korten had managed to bring that smile back to her. And then her sister told her that she felt much more invigorated here, and of course thought that Gate would always be her pride and protection. But now she wanted to develop and enrich the North. Nadia then asked Arwen if those words sounded like a real member of the Galdaeth family, the discoverer of the Golden Path. Arwen said that, of course, without a doubt, and that the main traits of their family were stubbornness and perseverance. Then she didn't start to ask her if her sister would let her stay here with him any longer, and at that moment Irina heard some kind of rustling. I didn't realize where the sound was coming from where the Duke and Lupin, Nadia's brother, were. A few minutes there earlier, Brother Lupin had touched the water to feel the magic it was emitting, and he realized that there was a lot more energy coming into the area than he would have expected. Afterward, the Duke asked him if Lupin had made sure that the spring was safe and healthy. But Lupin said that he understood why the water was dubbed healing water. But he also implied that he would need more time to verify it, after which he asked if it was true that Nadia had been blessed by God. And at that moment the Duke sensed something wrong. Then he turned back sharply and saw a man lying down. Apparently he hit something and fell down. As he approached him, the Duke drew his sword, pointed it at him, and told him to introduce himself immediately. It was these sounds of her that Nadia and Arwen heard and quickly ran towards them. When the girls came running to them, they asked what those sounds were and what was wrong, for they had heard a terrifying scream. Then Arwen came running in and asked as well, what is going on here, and who is this very person? Then Lupin said that he had put a protection spell on the place to warn everyone, and it seemed to have worked on him. Lupin said it's time for them to find out who this particular guy is. Nick also, when he got up, started yelling that he wasn't going to do anything wrong. He didn't even know who was here or what was here and told them to look at him. He was the most normal person. He began to say that he was an ordinary scientist who practiced medical science. Then the Duke told him that he should know that trying to deceive them would do no good, and began to ask him who had sent him here. Was he sent and ordered to you to hinder God's blessing? He then replied that no one had ordered him to do anything. He had just come to collect medicinal herbs that he had gathered here, and asked me to put down my sword. Then I said that he had to prove the justice of his words. And that's when Tanya came running in and called him Professor and said she'd managed to find him. Everyone was very surprised, and Nadia called Tanya by her name. Tanya was shocked that she remembered her name, but the professor also said that they were the only ones who could justify it. After that, they realized that they were acquaintances after all, and he was indeed a professor. And then the Duke lowered his sword. Then the Duke asked them a couple of questions and asked how they got there, since the place was under a protection spell. She answered that they had gone through a cave inside the mountain and said that it was not forbidden. Whereupon the Duke replied that it was a hard journey, but Tanya said that there was a tree growing there, the bark of which could be used to make an excellent potion, and that was the ingredient they desperately needed. And I then looked this up and said that this is the bark of the felt tree, and it has an analgesic property. Then the professor said he was only using it to make medicine to ease Tanya's pain. Then Tanya said she was a perfumer and said she wanted to give 1 jar to Nadia and said it was great for relieving sore feet when you had to sit all day. Afterwards, Nadia was simply shocked. This is the same person who advised her to try all these strange treatments, which did not help her at all. But what, Tanya said, was right. It was him, Professor Efford, and according to him, she would get better if she followed all his recommendations. After which the professor immediately yelled at her and told her that no such thing had happened, and he told her to throw all those things away, but told him that they had agreed not to tell the truth, so she had now lied. After that, it all seemed strange to Nadia's brother, sister, and Duke, and they said it was as if the two of them were hiding something special. Or were they wrong after all, they asked. Then they had no choice but to tell the truth, and the professor began by saying that he would risk his honor and his life, but tell the truth after all. His name was Ufort Zimmer, as mentioned. He is a specialist in the medical sciences, though after what he was about to confess, he might have to give up that profession. The cause of all disease is water, and all books propagated this belief, and he too accepted these words without bickering. Until one day his research pushed him to the truth. He realized that all microorganisms grow and multiply in unsanitary conditions, and that water was needed to wash away all that filth. Doctors are now offering hygienic treatments, and there is an urgent need to stop this from happening. Because he was much younger and more inexperienced than the other professors, he questioned the theories put forth by scientists before him, and his ideas were dismissed and the research completely ignored. That's why he stopped reporting his findings to the health committee. At the time, Nadia was shocked by what she heard, because she did not believe that he had surrendered in order to protect himself and his profession. Although she knew he was right. He admitted he was right and gave up, but it was to stay in his place, and he swears it wasn't an attempt to protect himself. But he explained that he realized that he had to remain a member of the committee to keep track of any misguided treatments they would propose. That way, he had a chance to stop them. And then Nadia supported him and said that it was all quite true. It was the professor who advised and threw away the ointment of fermented fish. And he also helps all the hospitals that visit God's kingdom. He comes there late at night and secretly treats them. Then Nadia really realized that he was doing all this so that the professors wouldn't catch him off guard at the hot springs so late at night, which meant he was really helping people at a time like this to avoid being exposed. Nadia then told the Duke that didn't he think it sounded very true, and why not let them go? After all, they needed to keep this secret, especially if he would take their future plans into consideration. Then the Duke's face turned red. He didn't understand what she was saying, and he was very pleased and agreed to it. After that, Nadia approached the professor and said, "Thank you very much for telling us the truth, and that you can count on us, and not to worry in any case, as you will not lose your position. And in return for that, let him just keep helping people like he did before." Then he apologized to Nadia and said that her face seemed too familiar and where they might have seen each other, then suggested that perhaps he had seen her in God's realm and apologized to her again. Then the Duke took Nadia away and they went, for it had gotten quite cold there during the night. After that, Arwen and Lupin started talking, and Lupin asked, "What's the matter?" To which Arwen said, "Apparently they've gone too far in trying to keep Nadia out of all trouble. after which they agreed that they would see each other tomorrow, wishing each other good night. Then the Duke and Nadia also began to say goodbye, but the Duke suggested to her whether she would mind if she looked into his resting place first, after which he remarked that he would like to dry her hair first. After that, Nadia became a little uncomfortable, and she said she could easily have done it herself. He shouldn't have gotten so worked up about it. But the Duke replied that there was a very great chance of getting sick on such occasions when one least expected it, and that one must not even imagine how worried he had been when he saw her in her drenched dress. Afterwards, Nadia said that she was very pleased to hear him grumbling. She could not move yet. She only listened to what he was saying. Afterward, Nadia remarked that she wasn't sure he was worried, just because she might have caught a cold. There was probably some other reason. Whereupon the Duke said that he had been saying a lot of unnecessary things lately, and apologized if she thought he was picking on her. But Nadia said she thought nothing of the sort, and that his grumbling was charming truly. Indeed, she liked it, as she realized he was saying it out of concern for her, or out of jealousy after all. And that was why perhaps she walked in his charm. Then the Duke said that this particular guy, Eifert Zimmer, was a professor. He only agreed to let him go because he thought Nadia had some plan for him. Asked her exactly what she meant about the phrase and future plans when she said that. Did she really want to keep him around them? Whereupon she said her plans were merely to hold hands with them and make them partners in their hot spring endeavor. 3. Since their experience will help in building their organization, then Duke understood what she meant after all. She told him not to worry, and she understood. It was with these concerns in mind that she had carefully considered everything before making any decision. So she apologized to the Duke and told him not to worry. The Duke then reminded her that also when Lupin had tested her soul, he had revealed that it had become much more stable. And then Nadia had told him that if one had to choose between the power of love and the hot spring, it was the latter that had had the greatest effect. "Does water really have such properties?" he asked her. "Well, that," Nadia replied, "that by no means it has." And then the Duke said, "In that case, if their love becomes even stronger, then the state of her soul will also become even more stable itself. And it just so happens that tomorrow her brother is going to give her one last checkup to make absolutely sure that she is fine and there are no problems with her soul." Nadia said he was right. And the Duke said what pleased him most was that his love could help her. That's when they realized they were made for each other and got down to business.